Hey witches, it's Lee and this is Doing the Magical Thing, and I thought I'd have a little chat with you about really conceptualising witchcraft, especially as a non-theist or atheist witch, but you know, any witch will get something from this, so do stick around. And I was having a chat recently with Alex Reck from portlandbuttonworks.com, and they have a fantastic site full of witchy things on there and other zines and buttons and all sorts of stuff. And I think the benefit really of witchcraft groups is that you find these people who are real sort of gems, and you can really have some great conversations that are real nuggets of gold, if you like. And one of these conversations we were talking about witchcraft as a tool, and I thought, you know what? I think witchcraft's a bit bigger than a tool. It's a toolbox, you know. It's something that you have all these different tools. And they said, yeah, you know, spells are tools, and that kind of stuck in my mind a little bit. I was a bit like, I dig that, because if you think about tools, let's get a bit mundane for a minute. They are things that have a particular purpose, and you have different tools for different jobs, yeah? You have a tool for turning things around, you have a tool for fixing something in place, separating something, you have a tool for maintaining things, yeah? And sometimes a tool is designed to just have a little tweak, sometimes it's a real repair job, yeah? And I think that's the same for spells. You know, we've got some spells that are really just there to maintain, like maybe a prosperity shaker jar or something, you know, protection amulet, that's kind of a maintenance, isn't it? And then we've got spells that are for really a real kind of event, something that we need to either head towards or head away from. Maybe we want to do a banishing spell, that's kind of like a separating tool, isn't it? And so all these things I was thinking about, and I just thought, just as a thought experiment, just to share it with you, because I think sometimes we can get a little bit away with the fairies with our conceptualizations of witchcraft, and we can get a little bit holier than thou around it. And realistically, witchcraft is just it's a resource, and you're the person who is using that. Yeah, you decide, you make all the decisions, and that's what's so great about witchcraft, is that you're the person, you're the kind of tradesperson, if you like, you're literally the crafter, the craftsperson who is, you know, making changes and making little adjustments and all these sort of things in your craft. And I think it's funny because you can kind of conceptualize it as both metaphysical and physical tools. So in terms of the sort of physical side of things, you know, sometimes when we first get into the craft, or you know, or throughout it, let's face it, there are little shiny objects that we think, oh, we need that. Sometimes other witches will show off those shiny objects and we think, oh, I could really do with that, you know. And so we buy a load of stuff. But I bet you, all the stuff you've bought, I bet some of it you don't know where it is. I bet some of it you've, you know, given away because you thought, actually, I don't really like that. And some of those things, you know, a few out of those things, you've actually kept hold of and have been really useful, genuinely useful things that you've used time and time and again. And I think when you have a toolbox, it's the same thing, isn't it? You've got those tools that you use time and again that are just well worn, but they still get the job done. And you've got those really obscure ones that you thought you really desperately need for some ungodly reason, and then they're sat in the box. They're probably still in the packet. And I think that's that's something I've definitely learned. Is I've definitely gone a bit trigger happy with buying things witchy wise, and then thinking, I don't really need that. I don't think I've even touched it. So yeah, just sort of a thought there in terms of the physical aspect of it. In terms of the metaphysical and how we kind of use tools and our disposal, spells being the tools, yeah. Spells are something essentially with purpose, aren't they? They're something that has a purpose, that's trying to get a job done. And if we're thinking about spell work and the output of it, the kind of energy that you need to do it, you know, we can use ourselves, our own energy, and this is partly why that's a big focus, especially for newer witches and throughout your craft, you know, of the sort of idea of grounding, so that you're not overwhelmed with energy, you know, you're not holding on to something, the idea of centering, so you're drawing your energy in, and then, you know, or wherever it is, you know, some people center to their chests, don't they, but I tend to center energy to my hands, because I find that's, you know, really what I'm using to get the magical thing done. And so you're doing a centering, and then that's, you know, especially in terms of using tools and such like, you're putting that energy out and you're putting it into this kind of all this potential energy you stored up from yourself. Then you're putting into your craft, you're putting into your spell. And we've only got so much energy, haven't we? We've only got a finite amount, and we get tired. And so I think some spells take up, you know, your own kind of energy, yeah. They take up a bit like hand tools, yeah. Hand tools you can use and you can put your own effort into it. and that's fine. You know, perhaps a certain spell is a bit of a screwdriver spell, yeah, something you can get away with, you can twist it around a bit and job done. Some spells need a bit more of a drill, don't they, really? They need something that's really got that bit of oomph to it, a bit of power drill going on there. And how would we get ourselves that power? Well, I think one of the things you can do is invoke energies from something else. So you could invoke planetary energy, yeah? Say you want to do a bit of banishing, yeah? You want to do a bit of banishing. Maybe you want to do that on a Saturday. So Saturday's your day to get the job done, because you want to invoke that Saturn energy. We think of Saturn, the planet Saturn, especially for banishing works and boundaries and stuff like that. That's essentially, you know, drawing in that energy to fuel yours, to really give it a bit of oomph. That's the electricity or the air or the battery pack in your power drill. And so we have our own kind of hand tool sort of spells. We have our power tool spells, and perhaps we will have spells that we need not just those things, but someone else to give us a little hand. You know, if you've ever tried to fix anything that's been a bit awkward in your life, and you know, needed someone else just to hold it a little bit, then those are the times perhaps when you can think of other witches who could support you. You know, sometimes you get people, especially in spell groups, you know, obviously you've got the coven side of things, but at the moment we're all online, and in spell groups, I think you often see folks saying, look, light a candle for me, will you, because I'm trying to do this thing, I could just really do a bit of oomph, yeah? That's the equivalent of someone holding something still so you can just work it in there and get it fixed together. So, yeah, it's just really a thought experiment with you today, and a kind of concept of that, and really talking about how we can invoke these different things. Now, I think that my key point is that you are the person who is controlling all of this. You decide what tools you want to use, and maybe you do have that particularly specialist tool that you really like, and maybe there's some spells / tools that have worked particularly well over the years that you've honed in on. Yeah, maybe you've got some attachments onto those spells where you've tweaked it a little bit and it's upgraded it a little bit, if you like. But essentially, all we're trying to do with witchcraft is use our energy, or the energy of something else that we're, you know, having in as a sort of assistant, if you like. We're using the knowledge of others, which is like a manual, isn't it, you know, in terms of books or whatever it is. And we're using assistants and all of that stuff, really just to get the job done. And I think there's so many ways to do it that don't have to be complicated, and it doesn't have to be removing your power to something else. It doesn't have to be removing your power to something else. It can be just centering stuff in, bringing it into you, and we talk, as I say, about that kind of centering for a reason, because you do need to sort of draw stuff in to then put it out again, just like you need to, you know, eat and drink and sleep. You're really just maintaining yourself. So yeah, as I say, a bit of a thought experiment there. I'm going to show you my top 5 tools that I use, which are not crystals, incense, or divination. And I think oftentimes those are our sort of 3 go-tos, aren't they? Or they can be quite commonly, but I want to think outside the box a little bit. And so I've picked 5 tools that I think will really sort of emphasise how I go about my craft. And perhaps you can think the same of yours, work out what sort of top 5 tools. I'm going to show you those next. And we're also going to have a little simple spell, or a little sort of simple, well, lots of spells really, with a particular couple of items. We've done magical theory. Let's do the magical thing. Okay, witches, so I said I would show you my 5 top tools for witchcraft other than incense, divination and crystals. You know, these things can be very pretty, smell nice and, you know, give us insight, but I think they're often the sort of immediate thought that we have, and I'd like to go beyond that immediate thought, really. I think also we tend to come across those most when we're first starting out and throughout our journey, but particularly because they are something that we see a lot. They're very aesthetic. They're something that have, you know, relatively defined meanings to them, and relatively good instructions too. And you know, you can build on the practice from there, to be honest with you. So what my first of the 5 will be is this lovely rattle here. Now it looks pretty plain, doesn't it? But it has a great purpose, and this I use for sound cleansing. I think we often go straight to smoke cleansing in witchcraft, and actually we miss out on this whole area really. And I've drilled a little hole in the end here using some colour magic in terms of correspondences for the cord, for purification, for cleansing itself and all that kind of shenanigans. So I can hang that up. I might pyrograph some bits and bobs in here, maybe some sigils or things like that. But I might leave it plain. I do quite like it as it is. The reason I like this so much is because you're literally changing energy. You're essentially sending out those sound waves when you're rattling this around. And so I think it's such a great one to disrupt sort of stagnant feeling, both in yourself, because you have to use your physical energy to move it, but also in terms of, in terms of my concepts of connection to energy itself, maybe feeling stagnant in, especially corners of the home. You'll find me shaking this around, especially in the corners, because I feel that's where sort of things tend to sit and go a bit stagnant. And, say you get, say someone visits your home, you're not particularly keen on them, but maybe you've had them round and you're feeling a bit rough after that, give it a good shake. And, obviously now that could be after a call online, couldn't it? It could be after a Zoom meeting or something equally tedious. So just, I would say give it a good old shake with a rattle, give it a go. I'm really a big fan of this. And the sound is something that I really love because it's so tinkly. It's like at Christmas, it reminds me of Yuletide and of that sort of sense of anticipation that you have, especially as a kid, and all those tunes that have this sort of in the background. So I think that's great because it associates something that's really positive to you, or at least to me, and enhances the meaning of what you're using it for. So absolutely love this. I feel for me it represents the element of air, obviously because of sending those sound waves out through the air, and it's kind of a communication to go, right, that's enough of you, clear off. I generally cleanse with the windows open, but other than that I don't have many rules for cleansing other than giving it a good shake. For that reason, it's quite fun for kids or for your partner if you want, they want to laugh, and just get out there, get your energy up, and give it a good old shake around. So that's my first number one tool. Second tool is going to be the crystal soap base. So melt and pour is a really easy way to get into soap making. Now I use this for my sigil soaps. Essentially what you do, you just cut it up into chunks, put it in a microwavable container, pop it in the microwave and then melt it down, and you pour it in a mould. You can get all sorts of moulds, but I'm quite keen on sort of generic ones, just practical ones really. I'm looking to get some witchy ones, but they're on Etsy and they're crazy expensive, so I'm just going to have to wait until I've got a bit more dosh there. But I'd love this because you can also incorporate things like colour magic, so you can use these dyes, and you can incorporate things like herb magic as well with your essential oils and things along those lines. So for instance, purple is a real power boosting kind of colour that's often associated with power, isn't it, over the years, and historically associated with royalty and that kind of thing. So we're enhancing our power and our status. Rosemary is very good for not only power enhancing but banishing as well, and cleansing. So if we were making a soap out of this, it would be quite a good one for maybe a Saturday, and really getting that energy out there. And I would say another thing I like to do with this is to carve into it, because it's quite easy to carve into, quite malleable, and you can carve a little sigil in there, a cleansing sigil, whatever it is you want, and you can rub that on your body, or you could rub the soap on your body in a way, or in a shape of a sigil, something like that. My third tool is this here, this pestle and mortar. So my step-grandfather made this for me, or rather made it, and it's come to me, and it's a really gorgeous pestle and mortar, and I just think it's a great way, if you've got any tools like this, any kitchen utensils that have come down through the family or whatever, it's a great way to incorporate ancestral magic. And what do we do most with sort of family members, chosen or otherwise? We tend to feast with them, or have food, and I think this is a great sort of representation of that. This would be my kind of earth element really, and I've got a little bit of salt in there that I've been grinding up for a spell. So really a fan of this, because not only my personal associations to it, but just because pestle and mortar is something that is really useful in spell work. It's a very practical tool. I really want to have a look at pestle work by Brina Garren, that she's got a whole book on it, that you can actually get at Alex Rex's shop, the portlandbuttonworks.com. Not sponsored, just want to give them a shout out because they're a lovely person. So yeah, I love this for that, and I really think it's worth having a separate tool for herb work that is magical related. It keeps any of those inedible herbs away from your kitchen utensils. So yeah, so that's my number 3. Yeah, just love it really. It's a lovely rustic thing, it's, you know, and yeah, my step-grandfather was a wood turner and a real craftsman, and I just love it. Yeah, I think it's just got a lot of meaning there for me. Number 4 is my pen here, or is it? No, I'll tell you what, number 4 is probably going to be my Pyrographer. So this really represents the element of fire for me. Now, obviously, you wouldn't normally touch this end. When it's on, you adjust the temperature, and what it does is it burns into wood. You know, say you could use like a little, you could make little wooden key rings out of it. I've been doing that recently because with this, I tend to make talismans. And it's so good for that because it's super easy to do that. Talismans and sigils and all that kind of thing are quite linear, so anybody could really do this. I really, I just really value this as a tool. This is quite cheap. You can get better ones than this that are more fine and almost write like a pen. Shinycraft on Instagram does some lovely, lovely work. Some beautiful seasonal tiles or seasonal discs, and they also do a lovely sort of bunch of signs like Kitchen Witch and you know, all that kind of stuff. Really lovely bits and bobs, so do check them out. But yeah, so I love this one for its practicalities, obviously, that it enables me to help others because I can make other people's talismans and gifts with this. So, you know, sharing craft and sharing knowledge and sharing your magical kind of energy there through the creation of talismans and such like. So yeah, absolutely hugely love this. You know, one day I'll get the fancier one, but this does it for now. I tend to sort of stipple, and you can drag it as well, but yeah, I really do like it. I'll show you an example if I can. Oh yeah, so this, I've painted it obviously, but you can do kind of relatively crude, you know, work on there. The side's probably a better example of what it can do, and yeah, just, you know, have a little play with it. Any of these sort of things you can have a play with, can't you? But yeah, so yeah, love that. My final thing, let's get it out of the way here, is my pen. Now, that probably sounds a bit mundane, doesn't it? But this is really what I use to translate all my magical kind of, magical theory, if I can get it in focus, onto the page. So, is it going to behave? We'll see. Yeah, there we go. So, so this is basically the translator of all my magical thoughts onto page and paper. And I like the irony that it's called Uniball Air, but I would say this represents the element of spirit to me, or ether, but I tend to go for spirit, because it's really all of my thoughts, all my processing goes through this, whether it's scribbles, whether it's neatly written out, you know. I write all the smaller lettering on Which Quote of the Week with this. Which Quote of the Week, I've done quite a few now. You'll see them if you go on at Do the Magical Thing on Instagram. You can see old posts. It's all quotes from various different books that have an application in witchcraft. If you've got any suggestions on publications I should look at, let me know and I'll see if it fits the channel, but I'm always up for new ideas. But yeah, so this is really a key thing. You could say this was an air element, really. I mean, obviously because it's called that, but also because it's about communication. But for me, it's definitely that translation of thought into reality, really. So yeah, so that is my number 5. I think these are probably seemingly quite mundane tools, but they are actually very valuable in the craft, and or at least in my craft. And I promised you, didn't I, a magical thing to do. So now bear with me, because this probably seems a little bit mundane, but it's a thought experiment, if you like. We're doing another one of those. So here we are, we've got our 2 magical things. Now, we've got a screw or a bolt, and we've got a nut. Now, what on earth do you think I'm going to do with this, right, really? I mean, you're looking at it and thinking, where's the nut and bolt? And I found this on the street, so it's not, you know, expensive or anything like that. But these two items I thought were a great representation of thinking outside of the toolbox, if you like, and really thinking about how you can do any kind of magic with anything. You don't have to sort of buy everything, you know, it doesn't have to cost a thing, witchcraft. You can do it with literally anything you can find around the house or around the street. So yeah, these are really a tool to symbolise a lot of stuff. And isn't witchcraft really symbolism? That's all it is, really, isn't it? Symbolism. So, well, that and a bit more. So what we're going to do, what could we do with this, you know? We've got nut and bolt. Well, I was thinking we can bring it together. So that would be good for attraction spells, drawing things towards you, whatever it is, maybe a new career, new home, you know, new partner or whatever. Yeah, so you could draw it in, and perhaps you could start on a you know, a waxing moon, and as the moon grows, you bring it closer and closer until on the full moon, it's coming to fruition, you've got it right to the top, and it's kind of there, it's being manifested. The other thing you can do, because we like a bit of an dividing into two or more at least, we can look at the opposite. So we're looking at removal spells. So we can each day, maybe on a waning moon, remove it until we get separated. So what could you do for this? You could do banishing spells, you know, that could be a good option for that. You know, maybe you want to get rid of a bad habit that you get up to. Anything like that, really just moving things away. And that can be just a very simple way of doing it. And obviously these things are meant to hold something in place. So you could use it as a binding spell. You could use it as something that maintains. You could use it for for prosperity or whatever it is. Maybe for health, you know, this could symbolise the body itself or the person, and this could be health drawing itself on nice and snug to the person there, blocking out any other sort of untoward things. So this really, as I say, is an example of witchcraft coming from literally anything. And my sort of challenge for you today really is to think about what it is, you know, that you have in your home or your workplace or wherever it is you are, that you can use. What is the most mundane thing you can think of that you could make a magical application for? So I'd love to see, you know, anything you do, as I say, on Instagram, also on Facebook. And please, you know, if you like the channel, give it a like, give it a subscribe. It all helps. And obviously, yeah, it's early days, so I always appreciate any support you can give. And thank you to everybody who's been so kind so far. So, yeah, until then, health and wealth.